Support comes from Gemma, architects, planners, and designers seeking to bring joy to their clients and communities. Details at gemastl.com.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio. I'm Maya Norfleet. About 15 years ago, Jason Cerrano was working for the Pattonville Fire Protection District in St. Louis County when he thought of a way to make it easier for firefighters to put out fire. He wanted to automate how a fire truck pumps water and allow pump operators to also pay attention to other critical firefighting tasks. Today, this technology is being used in more than 120 fire departments across the country, and in a moment, we'll learn about its use in Freeburg, Illinois. Host Elaine Cha sat down with Jason Cerrano, the inventor of that technology, in January. Jason is a native of Quincy, Illinois, and a graduate of Missouri S&T in Rolla. He worked as a paramedic firefighter in University City and for the Pattonville Fire Protection District. The Lake St. Louis resident is the Commercial Director of Research and Development at IDEX Fire and Safety. Elaine started her conversation by asking Jason about how he started his firefighting career as a volunteer in Rolla, Missouri.
It was totally random. A buddy of mine, Jim Younts, he actually works at Freeburg Fire Department now, and I met him hanging out at a party in Rolla. We were 21-ish, and he had this big pager on his belt, and I called him Yo. I'm like, Yo, What is that on your belt? He goes, that's my fire pager. I'm like, what does it do? Call you if your house is on fire? Like I knew nothing about the fire service at the time. And he's like, no, man, this is what I do. And he explained the volunteerism. And I was like, so you're telling me I can just go sign up tomorrow and they'll give me the clothes and put me on the trucks? And he's like, yeah. And that's how, and I loved it. Once I did it and got on the department, it's hard not to love that job.
Yeah. I mean, did you think about switching your career path at any point?
Not then. I was studying. I was playing baseball. I actually quit baseball to do more firefighting. I loved it so much. I had about a year and a half of school left.
Yeah.
And I actually took a engineering job leaving school. And I had a very serious conversation with my father. And I was like, Dad, I don't feel right about it. Like, I don't want to leave this department. I want to stay on this path. And he told me, he just said, Jason, if you do what you love, you'll find a way to make money at it, or it's less like working. And so with his support, if he would have felt differently, I probably wouldn't have chased that.
Yeah.
And so with that support, I did it.
Mm-hmm.
So I stayed, got my paramedic, turned down the engineering job, and spent the last 20 years as a full-time firefighter.
Yeah. So then you did end up combining mechanical engineering and firefighting. I mean, was that something you were consciously thinking about, or did it just sort of come up in the course of the work that you were doing?
Yeah, it just came up in the course of the work. I had every intention of retiring as a firefighter.
And was there kind of a moment or a specific situation when this idea about automating water flow, when that hit you?
Yeah, there was a very specific moment.
Yeah, tell us about it.
We were on kind of a regular type of house fire, and I was pumping the fire truck that day. It's not a great hero story. It was just a little bit of smoke rolling out the eaves, and they weren't asking for water very quickly, and I just spent a lot of time running circles around the truck. So if you can imagine yourself on the street side at the pump panel, the fire truck's huge. You can't see the house if it's on the passenger side.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel real isolated from your crew. You can only listen to the radio.
Yeah.
So you spend a lot of time trying to get in a position where you can check on things and see things or do stuff. And it was probably my fourth trip around the truck. I was like, man, there's got to be a better way.
Right.
So initially I wanted to get a pump panel on both sides. The only way to do that was to digitize it.
Mm-hmm.
And once I kind of got to that point, I realized, like, hey, you can now automate it now that it's all connected. So that was the specific moment that started.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And before we move from that particular situation, you're also wearing a lot of gear. So running around is not merely taking like a few sprints. How much weight are you carrying?
It depends. As a pump operator, you get a little bit of choice in clothes. If you're a firefighter, you can be, depending on your gear, you can be anywhere from 40 to 80 pounds of gear that you're wearing.
So I think that's some important context
Yeah.
to sort of think about insofar as efficiency is concerned. Now, we'll get to the story, your entrepreneurial story, a little bit later on. But Jason, in the simplest terms, we're talking with people who are not familiar with the equipment. What does the technology that you invented, the SAM control system, what does it do?
So it's actually pretty easy to explain. If you can imagine when you see a fire truck driving by, you're going to see lots of handles and gauges and levers and knobs. Everything's analog. The truck has no control of itself. So a human has to make every decision, control all the pressures, read all the gauges, remember all the steps. All I did was automate that. So you go from all of that equipment to just one finger swipe. So basically, a pump operator will spend cumulatively minutes looking at a panel during a fire, and a lot of time coming back to check on things. This makes it so simple that it boils the process down to just a few seconds. Turn your water on, pick a source, walk away.
And turning it on, what does this control system look like? Are there any little levers or knobs?
It's touch screen.
Okay.
So, and this is a big part. I have a lot of conversations with firefighters today. I challenge them, look at your fire panel, okay? What does it tell you? And all you see is that big mess of gauges. But if you think about your phone, you can take a look at your cell phone, and within a half a second, you're like, I've got some mail, I've got to farm my Farmville crops, I've got some text messages, I missed 2 calls. You may not have all the details, but it's a huge difference between that digital interface and what you see with mechanical levers and valves.
I'd like to introduce another voice into this conversation, and that is the voice of St. Louis on the Air executive producer, Alex Hoyer. Now, last week, Alex, you took a trip to Freeburg, Illinois, the fire department, which is in the Metro East, to see how this SAM control system that Jason has just described, how it is being used. Alex, of all the places in our listening area that you could have gone to for this and that Jason has actually lived in, why is it that you went to Freeburg?
Yeah, hi, Elaine. There are a couple of reasons. There are a couple of journalism reasons, and then there's a personal reason. I'll get to the journalism reasons first.
Okay.
But you mentioned in your introduction that this SAM control system is being used in more than 120 fire departments around the country, and a lot of that is concentrated in this area. So Rolla, O'Fallon, Missouri, Maryland Heights, Fenton, and then a few places in Illinois, Cahokia Heights, Marissa, Mascoutah, Glen Carbon, Freeburg, you just mentioned. And so the question was why Freeburg? And the journalism reason is that I wanted to go to a rural fire department because I think rural firefighters deal with challenges that big cities don't. And frankly, we have a lot of coverage of our bigger populated areas. And so I wanted to get out of the studio and go to a rural area. And then the personal reason is that I live in the Metro East. And so I was able to leave the studio early one day, go to Freeburg, and then it was about a 20-minute drive home.
Quick zip there. Alex, before looking into this, did you know much about firefighting, and particularly how trucks get their water?
Well, I know how to dial 911.
Okay.
But I didn't really know that much about water flow or pumping or anything like that. I think key to me to understanding this was having the fire personnel there tell me how a fire truck gets its water. So when a fire truck pulls up to a scene, they will use water that is on the truck. There can be 1,000 gallons there. There can be tankers that follow. So there's that source of water on the truck. And then if they're in a more populated area with fire hydrants, they can tap into the fire hydrant. But the thing I didn't really know a lot about was what they call drafting, which is particularly important in rural areas where they might have to take water out of a pool or a lake or a river, some other source. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't know particularly about that drafting piece of it.
Yeah. Who is it that you talked to in Freeburg, Alex?
Yeah, so I met Chief Hans Mueller. He's the chief of the Freeburg Fire Protection District. And just as a matter of orientation, Freeburg is a town of about 4,500 people in St. Clair County. It's just southeast of Belleville. If people have been to Eckert's, where they've picked apples or pumpkins, it's like a 7 or 8 minute drive from there. So Chief Mueller is the only career person at the fire department. It's a volunteer fire department. There are 34 other volunteers there. And he's been there for 25 years. He started as a volunteer when he was a senior in high school, and then he eventually became the chief in 2021. And so I asked him about this SAM control system. It's on both of their trucks. And I asked him what it allows them to do that they might not have been able to do before. And he said that they would still be able to do everything, like fight the fires and all that stuff, but that the SAM control system makes it more efficient, kind of what Jason has been talking about. And he started by telling me that when they put the truck into pump mode, that it will automatically open a tank valve and put water from the tank into the pump.
The engineer gets to the panel here. All he has to do is say, I want that line, and he swipes up. At that point, it takes the motor from the truck, goes to the pump, and starts spinning that pump and builds up the pressure that's already programmed in the system. And then he can kind of take his eyes a little bit off the truck here and look at his crew. You know, is the firefighter, the captain, do they need help getting that hose stretched to the building? Is there another department, apparatus, or whatever coming in to hook up to a hydrant? He can kind of focus a little bit of his time on that instead of sitting here watching every little gauge on the truck. So it just automates what we already had. Once we do get water, one of the really neat things is that, let's say we're in town here where we have hydrants, it takes that water. Once I even just hook the hose up to this and it sees pressure coming in on these intakes, it automatically opens that valve, says, oh, I see water. I'm going to take that water, I'm going to send it to the guys that are on the hose line, and then I'm also going to fill that tank back up as a reserve. And those are all things that we did for years, as long as I've been in the fire service, but it just automated it. So in that stressful situation, it takes all the guesswork out. It does it kind of for you in the background without you thinking of it, and gives you the opportunity to look at the next task that you need to accomplish.
Again, that's Chief Hans Mueller of the Freeburg Fire Department. Jason, what do you think of what Chief Mueller just said?
I think it seems like everyone else says it better than I do. So, hats off to Hans. He really touched on all those. He really touched on all those steps that we were talking about. You have to do all these things. As simple as Alex was saying, like just opening the tank to pump. Sometimes, not very often, but sometimes on the fire ground, a pump operator may forget to take that step when they're under stress. And then you just don't have water, and they have to back up and start over, and you just get that human element there. But what's more important is Hans was talking about the other side of being a pump operator. So too often we get focused on our tools as humans. Mm-hmm. I like my levers, I like my gauges. But a pump operator on every fire actually has two jobs. One is managing the water flow. The other is the things he was talking about, establishing a water source, fixing problems, stretching hose, getting tools. This system allows the pump operator to really focus on the human element that's happening on the fire ground, right? Mm-hmm. The machine's always the same, water in, water out. It's all the crazy black cat stuff that happens, the black cat cross your path, crazy excuses for why terrible things happen. That's what the human element is. We'd rather have that person with experience paying attention to that stuff out on the fire ground instead of standing there looking at gauges.
Mm-hmm. So Chief Mueller, was he immediately on board with this technology, Alex?
No. And I bet that's something Jason probably encounters too. He was skeptical. I think he said that he first encountered it at a trade show 8 to 10 years ago or so. And he said he was skeptical for several reasons, one of which was technology. That I think there are people, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to, just being uncomfortable with a new piece of technology. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about fighting fires, when people's lives can depend on things working right, that makes sense. Like, you want to make sure that it works. He also talked about that drafting of water that I was talking about, taking water out of a lake or a pool or something else, he talked about that being as another reason why he was initially skeptical, but then he was brought on board.
One of the hardest things we can ask an engineer to do is draft water in our setting, that is draft water out of a portable pool, right, to supply water to a barn that's on fire, something like that. It's kind of hard to do. And then you take a guy and put him on this truck versus another truck or something like that. It just makes it more complicated. With this system, it has a button you slide. It says, I want to be in draft mode. I swipe that. It knows that it needs to suck water versus pressure coming into it. If there's an easier way to put it, I don't know. But it does all that priming and everything for you. It just takes the water, puts it in there, same as if it was on a hydrant. As soon as you have that water supply established, kicks it over to the tank. When that particular pool is empty, I ran out of water, it automatically switches it back to tank water. And then whenever there's water in here, it switches it right back, so it automates all that stuff. And watching that system do everything for you, it's like, oh, that's really good. Those are moments in a officer or a fire chief whenever they're on those rural structure fires where you're crossing every finger and toe you have that, everything's going to work out right, and to see that being automated was really neat. And then still a little bit skeptical on it at that time. And one of my other firefighters, he's an accountant by trade. And, he kind of told me like, I don't work on trucks every day. I don't ride around on this truck every day like a career firefighter would in the city. And, I don't know mechanics and pumps and stuff like that. But I do work on computers a lot. I know how to swipe stuff and open valves and stuff like that. That's more in my wheelhouse, more in my comfort zone. And, I kind of came around to it like that.
So, Chief Mueller, I think that the last point he made about the accountant, he has a day job. He's also a volunteer. He's not used to the valves and the gauges or whatever, but that he's able to operate it with basically on a tablet by dragging and dropping and pressing buttons. I mean, I think that makes it sound simple, and it's more complicated than that. But the chief also recounted a story just this past fall. There was a fire, and it's not uncommon, especially in rural areas, to have a lot of or several volunteer fire departments respond to a fire. And so there was a firefighter from New Athens, which is just to the south of Freeburg, that responded to a fire. Freeburg had a captain there at the scene, but his attention was best spent elsewhere. And so the firefighter from New Athens was able to operate the SAM control system on the Freeburg truck because that's the same system that they had on the other truck there. And so I think that demonstrated just that interchangeability of being able to have multiple people work on the same technology.
Right.
That was Alex Hoyer, executive producer of St. Louis on the Air, talking about how the fire department in Freeburg, Illinois, has used the SAM control system. The system is an invention of Jason Cerrano, a Lake St. Louis resident and commercial director of research and development at IDEX. We need to take a quick break, but we'll be back shortly to continue this encore presentation. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio.
This is St. Louis Public Radio. Support comes from Perrick Corporation, a contractor with over 4 decades of shaping the St. Louis landscape. More at perrick.com.
Welcome back. I'm Maya Norfleet in for Elaine Cha. Let's get back to host Elaine Cha's conversation with Jason Cerrano, inventor of the SAM control system. In January, Elaine spoke with Jason about his entrepreneurial journey, creating a system that automates a key component in how firefighters do their job. Here, Jason shares how he went from idea to invention.
When you're on a path like that, it starts with the patents. And you have the idea, and it's hard to, an idea like that's going to require a lot of technology, a lot of software, a lot of time, and then at the end of it, nobody can really just do a startup like that. So we focused on the patent side of things. So we hired Armstrong and Teasdale. They're here in St. Louis. They were a great company to work with. You almost become, when you're really into it, you almost become family with your patent attorneys. You spend a lot of time with them. So it was at least an 8-year journey with them from the time we started writing the patents till the time we sold the company. So that's the first step.
And then I understand that you had a chance to work on an older fire truck in the city of St. Louis, kind of as a prototype for the technology. How did you get your hands on an old fire truck?
So the next step after the patent was we kind of created a video game type of solution. So I have just enough computer knowledge to be dangerous, so I actually contracted another local company, Dave Engineering. Both these companies were really good to me when I was by myself. I can't say enough about them as humans. So we kind of created a video game. We showed that at a very large trade show in Indianapolis. It's called FDIC. So it's annually, it's the biggest show in the world annually.
Oh,
so
wow.
St. Louis City Fire Department came by the booth and saw it, and they were just in the process of upgrading all their trucks to go digital. And they were like, well, that's interesting. You could maybe play around with one of the older ones first. And they actually gave me a 1999 Schmiel out of Engine House 10, and they gave me the truck. I don't know if this is ominous or not, but we got it on Halloween, and we put it back in service on April Fool's.
Oh, okay.
We kept it. Well, I'll never forget those dates. So
Yeah.
So that was pretty amazing. That was our biggest thing, is to test the technology out. I think the challenge was I brought the patents. Once I had the patents, I shopped the industry, and everybody said no, or someone's working on it. Patents aren't clear what they are. So we made the decision, like, we're going to have to build it and show it. But the fire trucks are 500,000, million, whatever. It's not easy to get a fire truck, especially one that you're going to have to do severe alterations to. So it was really brave of St. Louis City to help us out with that.
Yeah. Well, taking a step into entrepreneurism is also it's an act of bravery in a lot of ways, because many times it doesn't work out the way that you hope. You've mentioned partners and collaborators too, which is a really big part of getting anything like this off the ground. You'd mentioned your dad and the advice that he had given to you when you were thinking about becoming a firefighter. You also worked with your dad on this, right?
Yeah, he definitely was a big part of it. So my dad has a business background. He was great for that. So all the childish ideas I had, he kept things very real. It was a very stepped process. So you start with the patents, you get to a video game, you get an opportunity to build a prototype. The prototype gave me a chance to start engaging with Akron Brass and Class 1 down at IDEX Fire and Safety, which is ultimately where I ended up. So that company, too, they gave us a lot of free product and a lot of engineering support to integrate with all of their components to build the first one. So that started to build that relationship between the two. And that, again, like, it's a very progressive process. You can't just go from patent to money. Like, you have to step into the risk, if you follow what I'm saying. So you take a risk, you get a win, you take a little bit bigger risk, and you can kind of hear how that grew.
You sold your business, Jason, to IDEX Fire and Safety, which is where you work now. You made that sale in 2019. Were they an immediate yes to the idea, or was there a little bit of massaging and more promotion that you needed to do in order to get that to happen?
When we brought I joke with them, the president of the company at the time and one of the vice presidents were Sean and Bill, and they were really awesome to work with. At the beginning, there was a lot of skepticism as far as they had a lot of questions about the patents. Like, hey, like, if we're going to purchase you, we have to be responsible about it. So we have to play the opposition. So we went through a lot of that. Like that, I would say that was a lot of their skepticism. During the build process, it was when we showed up at the show with the first working prototype. And they saw it work, and you could tell. I mean, it integrates every component, almost every component that they make. It was definitely a great match.
So we mentioned earlier that the SAM, capital SAM, that this control system is being used in more than 120 fire departments around the country, with the biggest concentration sort of being here in the St. Louis area. Jason, there are thousands and thousands of fire departments across the country. What are the next steps in terms of the business?
So it took a little bit. I think the first challenge for us was to get the system to be really reliable and our ability to ship. So we don't actually build the trucks, we build the components for the trucks. So our first mountain was we need to be able to build something and ship it to an OEM and allow them to build it effectively, and then it needs to hit the street reliably. So we've done a pretty good job with that. Our next biggest challenge is getting adoption in the fire service. As Alex kind of alluded to, like nobody likes change and things like that. So in the fire service, it is world renowned for its resistance to change. And now there are some good reasons for that. When you work in a stressful environment, it's like sports, right? Like you train the smaller things. So if you play soccer, you work on little dribble drills.
Right.
So when you're playing the game, you're not thinking about dribbling, you're thinking about where you need to pass to. And the fire service is the same concept. Hey, make sure you can start a chainsaw. Make sure you know where all the tools are. Make sure you know how to pull this hose. Because when you get there on a stressful situation, you need to be thinking about those other things. So when you do muscle memory, if you change something, it doesn't suit the fire service.
Yeah.
Now, they also do love tradition, so there is a bit of that too. So that's the other side of the coin.
Maybe there's room for new tradition to start with this, right?
Yes, there always is. There's always room. If you have enough benefit, they'll find a way to find it or like it. Yeah.
That was Jason Cerrano, a Lake St. Louis resident and inventor of the SAM control system. That's an automation system installed on fire trucks that help firefighters work quicker and manage multiple tasks. Elaine Cha spoke with Jason in January. And before we go, we'd like your help with the show next week. Declining birth rates have become a nationwide phenomenon. And in the St. Louis area, that issue is coupled with population decline, leaving the region with the most severe population loss among major cities in the United States. So tell us, what keeps you in St. Louis? Why did you move here? And do you plan to leave? Email us at talk@stlpr.org. You can also leave us a voicemail. Call 314-516-6397. That's 314-516-NEWS.
Today's episode was produced by our executive producer, Alex Hoyer.
Audio engineering and podcast design by Aaron Dorr.
St. Louis on the Air is a production of St. Louis Public Radio. Understanding starts here.
Do you find yourself regularly listening to episodes of St. Louis on the Air? Suggest us to a friend you think might enjoy our conversations. And leave us a review and rating on Apple Podcasts on the App Store. It's the simplest way to help people discover our show. Thanks.
St. Louis Public Radio is a member-supported service of the University of Missouri St. Louis.
The Gateway brings you the day's news each weekday from around the St. Louis region and the state capitals in Jefferson City.
Our schools are accredited. We don't need this bill.
And Springfield.
How many more years must pass before lawmakers see time is of the essence?
I'm Abby Larico. Join me each weekday for The Gateway on the STLPR app or wherever you get podcasts.